action is no longer really existing?
Yes. I think they would work. I think they are needed.
And how?
But that's a problem. I don't think there's a political environment for them. Because I think there is a hostility to policies in general that help disadvantaged groups in the United States at the state, local, and national level. And I'm outraged by it. But I think that's a result of 30+ years of political work by conservative Republicans to change the discourse, to change the terms of debate, so that it becomes easier to blame the victim, so to speak.
So do you think, because we're in Michigan, do you think this somewhat has to do with that, because Michigan is still mostly segregated here in Michigan, that has a viewpoint on that issue, on affirmative action?
No doubt about it. I think I live in Detroit. Detroit's 80% black city. I think we're still stereotyped, marginalized, as unfit to rule ourselves, to govern ourselves. And that has contributed to an atmosphere where you can have emergency financial manager, the governor running the school board, and these other examples of white conservative Republicans kind of lording over black liberal Democrats or black liberal Democrats community. So I think it's outrageous. And I don't blame us, but I think my brother Kwame Kilpatrick didn't help the situation.
Well, he didn't, but I really believe that we have been stereotyped since we had Kwame Young.
Right, before Kwame. That's
before Kwame Young. But, so that's just my view. But I think we don't have enough political activists in the city of Detroit that's pushing for a lot of things for affirmative action like they should.
I agree with that.
And I think that's one of our downfalls in the city of Detroit. And you're right, we're not the first city that had an emergency financial advisor, though. Ben Harbor did first.
Right. And but I'm just being further disappointed because I'm not impressed with the results.
Right.
Like you said, the state's taken over the school board before, had influence in the school before. But I just don't see where it's really turned the situation around and it's a better, brighter day.
Yeah.
I just don't see that. And so I'm unimpressed with the state intervention in most of the cases that I'm familiar with. But yeah, we need more activism, definitely. We need more participation in politics. I think a lot of folks are disappointed, frustrated, and disillusioned. And I like to pick on Kwame because I voted for him.
Yeah, I did too.
Because, I just saw his talent, and I paid attention to what he was saying, and I just saw the skill there and the potential he had, and so I'm disappointed in his performance. I don't think he should be serving 28 years in jail, but I think that we lost a lot of steam, a lot of energy during his decline. And obviously, he wasn't the only one. I voted for Monica Conyers. I voted for other people who I just thought were impressive, who had potential, who knew the system, were well connected, who had the interests of the people at heart. And I've been disappointed. And I say that as a political scientist, someone who studies politics, pays attention thinks he knows something, but I've been disappointed with some of the local leadership.
I have a question. You have a question? Yeah, I have a question. So I'm wondering how exactly did activists in Brazil frame their demands? In other words, was it kind of an ethical matter? Was it a matter of justice? Was it a matter of kind of economic efficiency, economy? I'm curious about, again, thinking comparatively with the United States, what kind of arguments might work, to mobilize citizens, elites, to gain sort of popular support. So,
We have a chapter on that exact question in this book, and I agree with that thrust of that chapter, arguing that in Brazil the argument was framed as a social justice position, as the right thing to do based on centuries of mistreatment of poor people and black people. And activists again were consistent in hammering that point home in the spaces they occupied: political parties, church, labor union, neighborhood association, different spaces. And one of the contributors contrasts that to the argument of diversity, which we hear more here in the United States. That argument, that doesn't play well in Brazil. In part because the white elite doesn't think it can learn anything or benefits kind of from diversity. So the social justice is the right thing to do because of the past, that kind of carries more weight. It was more prominent in the debates over affirmative action in Brazil. But again, there is fear that if the Workers' Party, which is the PT, one of the most important political parties in Brazil, if the Workers' Party-led coalition government loses power in the next election or election after that, that more conservative political forces could try to unravel many of these gains in terms of poverty reduction policy, affirmative action policy, reduction of hunger, and things like that. And I think that could be the case, too. I think even though many conservatives voted for affirmative action when it was clear it had majority support and was going to pass, I'm skeptical about how committed they really are to these policies. And so, yes?
How much of an issue is it that Afro-Brazilians that being in school because of quotas, because of affirmative action, is stigmatized? So, like, how much of an issue is it for black people who might have the chance to go to a university they otherwise wouldn't, but because they want to be able, they think it's important to be able to say, I'm not one of, those people taking advantage, or whatever the argument might be, that's flipped the need for affirmative action on its head? How much is that in play, and how much was that an issue in the heyday of affirmative action in the United States, or was there ever a stigmatization of affirmative action among black people in the U.S.?
Well, I think I would go a step back and say the problem is that white supremacy has stigmatized black people in Brazil and the United States in general. And so that's part of the reason that there's been hesitance or resistance to the idea of more egalitarian social policies in general. I would say in both countries. But again, as a result of political struggle and other factors. Affirmative action is passed in both policies, been implemented. But I think the stigma has remained, and people have had to continue to struggle against the stigma, against the inferiority that's associated in many minds with blackness, against the superiority in many minds that's associated with whiteness. And so I think those struggles are ongoing in the United States and Brazil, and I feel it in the United States more kind of explicitly when I watch Fox News and I listen to Bill O'Reilly. It's just, he's one of the clearest in saying, you black people, you're the problem. You're the problem. You're not working hard. You're not acting right. You're not living right. You're the problem. Not only for your problems, but for American problems. That's how I feel when I watch that. And so those stereotypes continue to exist in the United States and Brazil. There still is this association of blackness with unfitness, with not good enough. And so obviously students who enter the university through quotas often have to fight against the quota of being, the stigma of being the quota student. Even though they're doing well, things are going well, they're working hard, studies have suggested there is that recognition that you weren't here before and you took a spot of my friend or my relative who would have been here had we not had affirmative action or quotas in Brazil. So that's ongoing. But the big deal in Brazil is that universities are trying to adapt to the needs of the new students, because the affirmative action students, they tend to be poor. They tend to live further away from the university. They have not had the academic preparation in general that middle class and rich students have had. And so in Brazil, I think I may have forgotten to mention that public universities, state and federal universities, are not only more prestigious, high status, but they're free. You don't pay anything.
You can go to college free.
You can go to college free. So that's why it's a big deal. If you get accepted into a public university, a federal university, a state university, you don't pay any tuition or fees. But if you come from a rich family, then you're good to go. But if you come from a poor family, that can still leave the problem of transportation. How do you get to the university? Because most Brazilian universities don't have on-campus housing, or they have very little on-campus housing. How do you pay for books if you don't have disposable income? What do you do if, even though you've been accepted to the university, you still have to work to help support your family? Which a lot of these students, are in that situation. And so universities in Brazil are looking to the United States and other countries that have student support services and that have financial aid programs and that have other mechanisms to ease the transition from high school to college and university. And so that's a kind of ongoing process. And some universities are more receptive and understanding than others. But it's an ongoing